Richard Buckminster Fuller, who was called Bucky by almost everyone who knows him, is famous for the geodesic dome. But Bucky didn't build his first geodesic, and that was in model form, until he was past 50. And his first patent on a geodesic structure was not granted until he was entering his 60th year of life on this spaceship Earth. That phrase, by the way, spaceship Earth, is another Buckminster Fuller invention. It came about when some young children asked him one day, what would it be like to live in a spaceship? Whereupon Bucky told them in considerable detail that a spaceship is exactly what they do live in. Those geodesic patents and the royalties earned from them are what have freed Bucky to do the work he most cares about, discovering the principles of the universe and passing on his discoveries to his fellow man. Altogether, Bucky owns hundreds of patents. Most of them are for building structures, including one shared with his father-in-law for compacted earth building blocks and a system of joining them together. There are patents for many, many different kinds of domes and for the struts and connections that make the speedy construction of the domes possible. There are buildings that hang from cables. There are huge, lightweight roof trusses. There is a mast that gets stronger the higher it is, in which each component hangs from the one below it. That's right. The upper component of the mast hangs from the one immediately below it. There's a brilliant automobile, first built in 1933. It was kept off the market by pressure from the other automotive giants. There's a one-piece bathroom designed for the maximally efficient home. And there are domes, and more domes, and more domes, including dome structures whose struts do not touch each other, but hang from each other by wires, like this one. Now, this series of 4 programs is based on the idea that if we can learn something about how the mind of Buckminster Fuller works, how he sees the process of discovery, our own ability as discoverers may grow somewhat. And it's remarkable that whenever this man is asked to explain some of his extraordinary structures or ideas or interpretations of history, he always goes back to very ordinary experience. Sometimes at first you wonder if he heard the question correctly. But then you see that he never answers a complex question with the end simple answer. He always tells a story to show how that answer was arrived at. Everything in the universe is connected to everything else, and the story always begins at the beginning.
I'm going to go through some things where I try to remember what the earliest kind of things I remember. At any rate, I just think it'd be typical of children who are not paralyzed. Certainly being born absolutely helpless. For months, the child cannot move itself, and mother moves it from here to there. And she's so confident that it can't move itself that she'll lay it on the bed with perfect confidence, not going to jump up and run away. You don't have to worry about it at all. It's okay to safely lay it on the bed. But in the meantime, the child is taking on food and getting a little heavier, and it's terminal. All it can do is to move little terminals. He can move his hand, but it can't move his main body. But in the meantime, it's picking up weight in his legs and arms, and there comes a day when with an arm over like that and a leg at the same time, and the center of gravity suddenly rolls over. And mother isn't around. This child is suddenly, up to now, I've always had to be moved. Suddenly I move myself. It's a very strange experience. I don't see anybody around here to move me. Here I've moved. So you sort of go more and more, you were connected with some wiggling, and then do a little more wiggling and roll over again. And many children will roll to the edge of a bed and roll off. Luckily, they're beautifully designed to this moment, hydraulically and pneumatically, so it doesn't damage them very much, but there's a very powerful effect of the bang. Whether they have that kind of a fall or not, they begin to discover that there's something going on around them that's there, much more constant than mother. And that's something that seems to keep pulling them in this direction when they're trying to stand up and trying to stand up. Always go this way. So he watched a little child with a spoon sitting in his high chair, and pushes the thing to the edge of the thing and goes on the floor. And the parents pick it up and put it back, and the child does it right over again. After it's done it about 10 times, the parents say, I got a kind of dumb child here. Anyway, this child then, I said, present is something that makes things go in this direction more often than mother is there. So you get very deep, and it hasn't any name for it, and doesn't try to have a name, but it's very aware that it goes in that direction, and just doing every kind of checking to be sure it's so. Doing beautiful research on it. And having then found out that something is always pulling you in this direction, is now lying on the bed, and he would like to get off the bed now. This time he'd like to do it, negotiate actually getting off and not get hurt. So we find lying down there horizontally, and you learn that you can angular pull of your legs, so you can pull your legs up like this and get where you can then sort of inchworm, changing your center of gravity. You don't use the word gravity, you don't use it. The point is you learn that you can change the emphasis by certain movements of your head and body to have then more adherence to bed on the front end while you put one leg backwardly. And then you get the other leg backwardly, and then you gradually move, keep inching backwardly. So you find yourself then lying on the bed horizontally and get your legs out over the edge. This would be the bed now, and my legs begin to get out over here. And I get a little further out, and I find I only have to lift my head a little, and I do this, and I begin to accelerate. It starts to slide, and then I can feel it's going to be pretty bad. It's going to hurt my legs, so lean back flat, horizontal again. When I'm horizontal, I got on the brakes, and when I go vertical, I got on the accelerator. Whatever this very mysterious thing is that you don't have any name for or anything, you're now catching on that is something you can control. It's a power capability to get from here to there, not being moved by mother or by anybody else. You got an invisible kind of a vehicle, and you can employ it. Do this way, it's accelerate. This way, it's brakes. Now, you then get a little further out there and you say, I remember it's an awful long way down, and it hurts when you hit, but I think I can take it because I'm eager to get off this bed. So you get out there and you finally say, all right, bing. Now we're down. I was 72 when I first had an opportunity to ski. For some reason or other, I got in doing other things. At any rate, I was at Aspen, and the man who had started the Aspen ski was a man named Island. And he said, would you like to try skiing? I said, I'm much too old. He said, not necessarily. And he said, he was interested in my thoughts, and he said, if you'd like, I'll really like to take me a couple of days. If you'll get the equipment, we'll find out whether you can ski or not, whether your muscles are still all right for it. And so we did go out for 2 days, and he said, could be really worth my keeping on. At any rate, after the last time I was out there with him, I said, I'm going to give you the scientific generalization of skiing. He said, I don't think there's any. I said, yes, there is. It's called angular valving of gravity. And I never thought about it. That's exactly what it is. That's all you do, just changing angles of your ankles, of your direction. It's purely angular controls, which gravity is the accelerator. It's angular valving of gravity. Valving, turning on the energies and shutting it off at your command. Now, I think then this is what I think is the very essence of learning. There has to be a fundamental experience on the part of the individual, which other individuals can then say, I too experiencing this, and I have, in my experience, I'm older, it led to this, and this else is a little bigger. There are bigger hills than the one you know about, and you can accredit it. But I think all the real apprehending has to be in the part of the individual. That little child had already greatly mastered the concept of the angular valving of gravity. Now, anyway, this is my own approach to others, that I would not sit with you and talk about, I will not discuss anything where I ask you to believe that there's something that behaves in some way that you don't really have some fundamental feeling of why it does what it does.
Well, now, if our native facilities are so finely tuned, our natural ability to research, to integrate and understand our experience so universally shared, like that baby learning to angularly valve gravity in order to get safely off the bed, why don't more babies grow up to be Buckminster Fuller? Here's one answer, again beginning with a story.
I had a very interesting experience a year ago being asked to go to Winnetka High School, in a very important suburb of Chicago. And it is a well-to-do suburb, and the Winnetka High School has a very good record scholastically. And they asked me if I would come, and the senior students had asked for me, and they asked me if I'd come and spend a week with their classes. And they go all the way from sub-kindergarten to the top of the high school, ready to go on to the university. They started me off with the older students, and the older students were sitting there just waiting to be talked to. They were very eager to be talked to, but the point was they were saying they were waiting to be talked to. Then, as I got to the younger ones, they would ask me to come to the class, and they'd have to interrupt the people, the kids, because the kids were already doing something. When I got down to the kindergarten, they brought me in the room and said, I said, these kids, the babies, they were so fantastically busy really studying how things work and what you hold together, this tear and this shine. They were absolute research departments, and they didn't need me at all. I saw it just as clear as could be that the younger you got, more life was spontaneously engaged in research and development of its own. It doesn't need anybody to prompt it at all. But what we've done in our school is to knock this beautiful investigative drive of humanity to not only understand but to demonstrate competence, is what they want to do all the time. Understand and demonstrate their competence to participate. They just spontaneously want to get into what the universe is doing. They want to understand those principles. So I found what we do is discourage the kids and say, no, you come in here and I've got to give you half an hour of this and half an hour of that. The teachers talk about attention span. They don't have much attention span. Attention span couldn't be more nonsense. It's simply, this is how bored the kids are with what the teachers are doing, are disconnecting their spontaneous tie into the universe. So I simply see that we really let these people who have said you have to earn a living, so saying yesterday, just say, you're now free to go out and go fishing and start thinking about the fact you don't have to do anything to cheat somebody else out of his job so your family can eat. And you're going to say, what was it I was thinking about before they told me I had to earn a living? And you're going to get back where you as a kid. And your interest in the kind of information that's coming to everybody today is bound to be fairly great.
Well, it might seem easy for a very successful man to sit there and tell us that we should all drop out, forget about earning a living, just go off fishing, rely on our sensing and thinking equipment to lead us where we ought to go, and trust that if we concentrate on doing what has to be done in order to further the great design of the universe, that we will be rewarded from unexpected directions. A lot of people get pretty resentful when they hear Bucky urging just this, until they learn that that's exactly what he did with his own life, back there at the age of 32, when everything seemed to be going so wrong for him. He dropped out. He calls it peeling off. He took a vow of silence. He wouldn't speak until he had spent enough time paying attention to his own experience and thought to shed all the playing of other people's games that he learned over the years. And he would commit himself to working on behalf of other people. Fuller points out that when the bee flies from tree to tree collecting pollen, and without knowing or caring, carries the essential genetic material of life from one tree to another so that the trees can reproduce, the bee's long-term reward is fresh air to breathe. Without vegetation, our oxygen would not be replenished. When animals eat vegetation, they give off carbon dioxide, which is necessary for the plant to breathe. Each component of nature doing what it must is rewarded ecologically from directions it didn't expect. The bee went after food, ended up getting air, didn't expect that. And it happens over a long period of time. Fuller argues that the same thing will happen to individuals and to the human race ultimately, if individuals will do what the great design of the universe has equipped them to do uniquely well, and that is use their minds to open those doors, to follow the paths that unfold before them, as he discussed in the last program. Drop out, he says, peel off, consult your experience, and think about what interests you.
People just don't have to be the machines. They don't have to be the slaves of anybody. They really are, really it's perfectly feasible now for everybody to get to be, really meet universe and get it to be the kind of comprehensive experience that I've been in myself experiencing for quite a number of years when I deliberately peeled off to see what would happen if you did. What I did do at that time, and I really like to point it out and put it clearly, I did not do it in blind idealism in 1927, 28, when I said I'm going to commit myself to humanity, because I said, I see that there is ecology and there is an exchange of the gases between the vegetation and the mammals and so forth. There is a design. Therefore, if I commit myself to things that need to be done, that are part of the design, if I'm really right that those really do need to be done, and nobody else is attending, and I do it, I'll find my input. I'll find myself, because I'm then abetting evolution's need. I'll find myself being supported, but I will not be paid for that task that I did. It'll be coming to me in completely different kind of ways. It'll come to its credit in one way or another. So that is 46 years ago I committed myself to that, and there's no question about it. I found that the credit has come, always been indirect. I learned to live in a frontier where there's no budgeting at all. I don't have any agents or anybody to promote, no secretaries, no salesmen. I only talk to people when they ask me to talk to them, and I engage to do the things, and then I just get them done and prove they work and they don't work. And if this works and somebody comes along and says, I got an emergency, I say, all right, here it is, and it does work, and it gets going. All my things have been taken in and put into use only in emergencies when nothing else would work. So I've found what I undertook to do is it emerges by emergency, because it is then the next stage, and it is more economical, and it works. So I found that I'm really a good working demonstration of the circumferential integrity, which is really a triangulated integrity, as against then having to look out for yourself and bargain for every point. I hope that, and I think I'm beginning to encourage the young world that does know about me into being daring to commit themselves. I'm no longer afraid of misleading the other man into it. I'm utterly convinced of this integrity. So I see humanity going from linear local spikes himself and into becoming circumferential and doing this beautiful synergetic integration. Just as you and I as friends, our feeling as we met together doing programs before, we have really realized there was a synergetic effect of coming together, and we've actually had the feedback that gives it to us, but it does come from around the world, not from right next door.
The most outstanding implication for me, personally, from this element of Fuller's argument, is that if you will trust your own mind and then take it easy, and I mean, don't worry, your mind will repay that trust.
I had several experiences with subconscious where I was counseled. For instance, early days, one of my early jobs was one of just adding up columns in a branch office of a great packing house of wholesale meat dealers. And there was an enormous amount of food being handled. They want to keep very close track, see where they were losing poundage and shrinkage and so forth. And I learned to add up enormous columns. And one day one of the auditors was there checking up on all the figures of this branch house, and he said, I see you being very industrious, adding up that column and watching your mouth, and you're saying 73 and 8 is 81, and being sure you're not missing. And he said, your subconscious has so long ago learned how to count. You taught it that a long time ago. And it knows well in advance that that is 81. In fact, you don't have to say 73 and 8 at all. All you have to do is to look, and you're going to find, let the word come out, it's going to say 7381. You can get like surfboarding, you can really get up there and ride it, and out will come the figure. The adding has already been done for you subconsciously, just let the answer keep coming out. And so it's going to scare you to do it, but the point is you'll go so fast, you'll be able to go through the column 3 times in less time than you're going through it once the way you're doing it. and just your eyes are absolutely infallible. They just recognize that's a 7 and just go down the thing, and then the numbers coming out here. So I found it was possible. It was scary, because I did have this wanting to be certain, like feeling my way along, see my feet doing this. But I found it did work. And he said, now if you come out twice the same, that'll be in much less time than doing it your slow way, and just let it go. That's probably very correct. So I learned that could be done.
That is scary, isn't it? You have to do it quite a few times before you come to trust it. But when you come to trust it, it works. If you trust all those things that are going on in your head when you're not looking. Like having a loose wrist when you play ping pong. Bucky's accountant friend called it the subconscious. Another aspect of the same function is intuition. And as you would imagine, Bucky urges us to trust our intuitions, but in a special way. He suggests a strategy for dealing with intuitions.
There was a man named Northrop at Yale, a well-known professor, and he wrote some very good books.
Meeting of East and West, is that
Yeah.
yeah.
And he decided, and quite independent of another author and scholar, to make a search on both of them used the same strategy. They picked well-known scientists who made contributions. All the world agrees they were very great contributions. Apparently they did it themselves. It wasn't partly somebody else. They then looked at the literature, the letters written by those people, their diaries, their notes, anything they could find written. Also, intimate letter to them, possibly their wife and intimate friends. And they were only interested in this documentation for a little while before they made the great discovery, and they didn't know they were going to make it. They carried looking at this research at the time they did make the discovery, and for a little while afterwards. They said, each case, they said, can we find anything common in any of these great scientists' notes here that all of the scientists identify as being an important part of that great discovery? Both Northrop and the other man found, incontrovertibly, that each one of them, the one thing that they talked about was intuition. They said, in one way or another, their own words, intuition played the number one part in their good fortune to look in the right direction. They were in the right area. They were hypothesizing this and that, trying out, but suddenly they looked at this. Then they said the second most important factor was the second intuition, which comes about 45 seconds later, about what you ought to do about what you just discovered. You light a cigarette and really forget it, because many really quite important discoveries are made and really lost. Otherwise, it's like a fisherman, and he's got a fish nibbling there. The second fisherman, how do you pull on that hook to really get that fish in and land it for humanity all the time, really lucky. So those two intuitions, again, it's strange how that number 2 shows so up in the, whether it's Euler or Gibbs or in topology of the energetic geometry and so forth. Unity is 2, because there are the 2 poles of every situation. At any rate, there were those 2 intuitions. And this has really quite changed the tone of voice of those who are really in the know, thinking about the part intuition really has played. So I found this very gratifying, because it seemed to confirm what I have really made well over 100 important discoveries in mathematics, and every one of them were intuitively, the titillation of that hook was intuition.
If man is so naturally capable and our intuition is so inherently good, why do things go wrong? And what should our attitude be towards people who do lie or commit crimes or simply fail to do good work by failing to trust themselves?
You're not understanding this. I've got to understand the other man. And the nearest thing I do to what you may call praying is really try and do some very, very good thinking about the other man. I really deliberately take the people who seemingly what they're doing is most alien to me. Say, I've really got to understand that fellow. He is, and I'm really convinced if I were born in an environment that he was born in and went through, that I would do just what he does. So I have really arrived at a place where I do not really, if I find myself by conditioned reflex tending to ridicule something, because I used to like to enjoy people laughing because I said something, I'm not even allowing myself to indulge in getting something, get a good laugh, because I'm just not going to be tough on anything anymore.
There may be some events, some collections of people, some systems, some politics, some corporations that really are very much in need of criticism.
This would be different. I'm interested in talking about how things work and don't work. I want to know all the ins and outs, but I just learned that I get blinded to how things do work and how they might work if I stay negatively preoccupied. I don't like that. I just don't have any time for that anymore.
You a long time ago formulated your famous comparison of the net effect to the Earth if we sent off one rocket load of all the politicians and put them in orbit around the sun, what would happen the next day, and conversely, if we sent off a rocket load of all the technologists and scientists and people who make sure that the machinery is in good working order, what would happen to the world the next day. And that was, at least on the surface, an expression of contempt for politicians and for the kind of work they do.
I would say that really wasn't contempt. I was trying to find out, I really did want to have some way of making a study, I read a true isolation of what was really essential to man, what wasn't essential.
And you felt that politics was a very low order of...
I feel that man is deeply preoccupied with the necessity of a father complex. He'd been the slave so very long. He's really asking somebody to be Mr. Big and tell him what to do.
To come back to your remarks yesterday, apropos our deployment of our best technology, and you did say that the technology was in good shape, but we've had a hard time getting the cooperation of people to produce the best results that technology has. People don't cooperate because they don't see the commonality of their interests. This is another thing that you're telling us over and over.
If you can help them to see them, I think they behave very well.
Yeah, but another thing is that in competing as they do for their share of the topsoil because of their misunderstandings, there are people who genuinely see their interests as being in conflict with that of the other fellow. And one of the major jobs of the politician is to try to work out compromises between people who see life in a different way.
Oh, Dick,
and produce cooperation.
Yeah. I'm anything but an instant panacea man. I see due process and only due process, and I'm only interested in all the gestation rates that you can make a baby instantly. Whatever it takes to make anything, I want that time. That's why you really have to be tolerant and not be impatient.